But let me just take us straight to the papers this morning. Dr. Abimbola Oyarinu joins us this morning to look at the papers. He's a researcher with the Institute of African and Diaspora Studies in the University of Lagos. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
Well, perhaps the biggest news in town today is Hilda, but it's represented on the front pages of some of the papers. Let's begin with the Guardian newspaper. The biggest story on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning is uncertainty over $2.3 billion Siemens deal as grid collapses 99th time under Buhari. That story is on page 6 of the paper this morning. And, you know, a number of people have actually been asking, what happened to the Siemens deal? I remember it's a G2G kind of arrangement, and then here we are, how many years after?
Well, if people only get the government they deserve, I guess this is what we deserve as Nigerians, because we keep recycling the kind of people who have squandered our Commonwealth. You remember that during the Obasanjo regime, over $16 billion was expended on power. I would not think much of those who are in charge. I would say the structure we currently operate has allowed this to happen. What do I mean? The current system where there's no accountability, we don't hold our leaders to any form of there's no reasonable results that we hold them to. The bar is so low, and they keep winning elections. So how do you tell them that we do not deserve what they are currently giving us? But beyond all of this, nobody runs the power sector the way we run it and expect any reasonable result. A system where, you know, people can afford to hold the energy generating company over trillions of naira. How do they function? How do they manage the grid? And how can we attract investors into the sector? Currently, the sector, they've been able to find a way to stabilize by actually creating a structure that eventually work on the long run. But what we currently have will continue to get this kind of result, except, of course, the energy sector starts to attract the kind of money that it deserves and the kind of people that needs to.
Well, the energy sector is quite large. This is just the power sector, within the entire energy ecosystem. And one is wondering, I mean, you talked about the $16 billion plus dollars of the Obasanjo era, which ended 2007. But here we are now. Even the Siemens, I think the Siemens arrangement came under the Jonathan administration. I'm not quite sure. Okay, so here we are now, and we've been having this collapses. What could be stalling this? Is it a function of what government has done, or because government is not the one that is going to do it. Government is literally guaranteeing the private sector practitioners in these two countries. So what could be the drop down?
You see, when you have a system where you have to pay your way to get a deal, you become accountable to yourself and not the people you're working for.
Okay. I think you're saying a lot without saying so much. But then, of course, as I mentioned, that Hilda story is right there on the front page. Buhari, Lawan hail Hilda on world record feat. Story is on page 2. How does that come across to you? Everyone is hailing, even though the Guinness Book of World Records is still saying we need to review some things.
Well, this is one of the few good news that we have seen coming out of Nigeria. And gradually we are becoming the entertainment hub of the world. This is good for us. It's good for our public image, and I believe Ida has done herself and her family proud. She was. A lot of people have tried to make it look easy what she achieved, But I'd say it's not sleeping for 4 days, standing on your feet.
Let them stand and cook for 4 hours.
If it's easy, everyone should be doing it.
Let them stand and cook for 4 hours first. That's the Guardian news.
Oh, well, Nigerians have gone ahead by themselves to put Hilda in their own, in the Guinness Book of Records. So they're not waiting for Guinness right now. Okay, let's look at other stories as we turn to the front page of This Nigeria. And This Nigeria leads with that story that broke yesterday. Don't come to Nigeria. United States of America. Look at the riders. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken announces visa restriction on Nigerians who undermine 2023 electoral process as police launch manhunt for politicians over plots to derail inauguration. You know, as my colleague Cardi always says, the elections might have come, but they have certainly not gone. And this is reminiscent, of even the letter by, the award-winning author to President Joe Biden some months, weeks after the election, about the hypocrisy of the United States. And so we see this one now. The United States is saying that they've slammed visa restrictions on Nigerians who manipulated the electoral process. But then again, we're not seeing these individuals. They are not named. Is it reminiscent of the demand for accountability and a little more honesty by the United States of America, that it should live up to its billing in committing to democracy, not just in words but in action?
Well, the United States is a country that understands international relations. They only go where their interest is protected. I think it suits them.
When you put it like that, it sounds...
because it suits them now to actually call names, to actually ban these people. I think it suits American interest because they are considered the global police for democracy. But when you look at cases of, what is happening with democracy in Egypt and America's position, you then start to ask the question, why the double standard? But this is Nigeria, and they have come to say the United States will not welcome election riggers, people who have stampede democracy and all of that. It's a welcome development, but I still think that more needs to be done. They need to speak in definite terms, and also, if these people, try to parade themselves in future, I mean, they should be called out. So I think America should start to name names and call these people out, basically.
Let's look at other stories now. At the bottom strip, 10th National Assembly North Central governors reject APC zoning to meet with Tinubu. Region senators-elect insist on deputy Senate president. Now it looks like that aspect of our politicking, where ethnicity and religion colors the objectives and of course the outcomes, will never go away in a hurry, and it's repeating itself this time around. It's as if those aspirants are not letting up in insisting that they will also, partake in the process. How do you see this playing out in just a matter of days?
Well, in Nigeria, when a candidate is publicized as the ordained candidate, you can tell that sometimes it doesn't go that way. I believe the party supremacy should be respected. It's unfortunate that we're where we are, where religion and ethnicity determines who gets what and how. But politicians have come to use these appendages, to their interest. You see politicians parading themselves like they represent a whole region when they are not even popular at home. This is the reality, and I think that the APC is right to actually consider some of these things, because we are an heterogeneous society, and these things must be factored in to keep the system stable, because they are the ones who champion this ideology when it suits them. So it has become part of us, and the common man on the street will not understand. For example, when you have top 4 citizens of the country coming from a particular religion. He starts to promote some kind of phobia, which I think must be considered and factored before they take any decision.
So I wonder what the decisions would be. Would it be region or would it be electoral gains, as has been, touted? Let's leave it there for this Nigeria and head to Abuja.
Thank you, Bukola. And we take up with Leadership newspaper. 2 stories, basically. First, the one above the nameplate, the Hilda Bassi story. I mean, all Nigerians are excited about that. But see this, and then let's talk about what leadership can do, what every leader can learn to do from this one. She said, I almost gave up 6 hours into the contest, Linda Bassi speaks. See the writers. She's a product of resilience, hard work coming from her family. I give God all the glory, says excited mom. PMB Oshibajo, others celebrate as Chef Bassi hits 100 hours, makes Guinness World Record. That story continues on page 7. But let's talk about this. I almost gave up 6 hours into the contest. What does that speak of the leadership qualities in that young lady and other youth, and indeed Nigerians, that they can borrow from?
Interestingly, I saw one of her videos on social media where she claimed to have lost serious weight from coming from a lot of discipline, losing over 20 kg in a space of 2 years. I'm currently working on my own weight loss exercise, and I can tell you that she's extremely resilient because I have not dropped more than 2 kg since I started the journey.
Interesting where you took it to. But let's see this other one coming from Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala that says, 2 governors-elect says, avoid debts, pay salaries or fail. Okonjo-Iweala tells governors, that's on page 4. Perform or be voted out. PMB tells governors-elect, let your successors be. Saraki Aliyu Dankwambo caution. Now, let's see what about avoiding debts, pay salaries, or fail. Okonjo-Iweala tells the governors. Is that good advice? Would you consider that very sound?
Of course, that's how any reasonable country should run. I mean, that's at the macro level. When you look at it at the micro level, as an individual, if you choose to always borrow money, one day you would come home and you won't find your properties because definitely those who you hold will come for you. So that's the story of Nigeria. And I believe if we have to avoid debt, how do we even start when we don't produce anything? Our oil is not worth much anymore. I recently read that we're not even the top producer in Africa anymore. That's Angola now. So the point is, what are we doing to avoid that? I don't think we're doing anything currently. But I believe 2023 onward, we will start to see a difference in governance. Not because our group of politicians have chosen to change or they've given their life to Christ, as it were. But what I think has happened is that there's a third force, a worthy opposition, locking in the corners. And that helps to spur or bring out the ingenuity in people and helps them to perform. And this has always been my argument, that we need a strong opposition that's actually capable of gaining power from the ruling party. And when they recognize that, it will spur them to action.
Okay, let's take a look at Daily Trust newspapers now. Has this NNPC to resume oil search in Lake Chad next week. That's attributed to Kiari. Imagine that's the general group managing director of the NNPC. That's what you find on the front page of Daily Trust. Open shares for public next year. Our gas pipeline to connect over 11 countries, Europe. That's the lead story on the front page of Daily Trust. They also have, well, you can comment on that, but I want you to also look at this. I mean, let me know whether you'll be buying shares in NNPC when eventually they go public. But take a look at this. Resident doctors to begin 5-day warning strike tomorrow. We also heard the Minister of Labour dissociating the federal government from the bill. currently in the National Assembly seeking to bond governors for, doctors for 5 years after they've finished their studies, making sure that they can travel. What are your thoughts on this as well, even as NARD is threatening to go on strike tomorrow?
Seasoned doctors, as it were, because I believe this is more or less like kidnapping. Compelling them to stay it's not a popular opinion, but I think it is the way to go, but not the way they are going about it. We can institute sort of a loan system where, because currently the university system that we currently operate is not sustainable, where students can come into the university on government loans. And if you want to leave the country, you have to pay the loan back. It should not be applicable to doctors alone. It should cut across. Because what we currently experience is that the state trains you over time and you just up and leave, contributing your quota to another economy rather than the economy that has trained you. That is a total waste. So instead of compelling them and gagging them to stay, why don't we institute a loan system where if you don't pay the loan, you're not leaving, basically.
Well, that's definitely one way to look at it. Nigerian
News Trust.
All right, thank you, Marco. Nigerian News Direct is next, and this is what we have on this front page. U.S. imposes ban on 2023 election manipulators. That story is on page 2 of the paper this morning, and you already just spoke to this one. Tension as resident doctors embark on a 5-day warning strike this Wednesday. NSIA NCC signed MOU to boost Nigeria's climate action agenda. That's Nigerian News Direct this morning.
And from Nigerian News Direct, let's take a look at the Daily Times of Nigeria. And this is how the Daily Times chooses to lead. 13 days to go. FEC approves 18.6 billion naira for 3 ministers, 37 new private universities. Of course, that is bound to, set off another round of talking points, particularly as it has to do with the review of the performance of the ministries, the cabinet of the outgoing administration, and 37, new private universities. What does that seek to achieve, particularly, with the challenge of revenue generation, particularly for the universities, lecturers being owed? We have not, totally recovered from the unrest, in the public university sector from 2022. What are your thoughts?
Well, the private universities are simply responding to the incompetence of the public universities. People would always invest in sectors they consider viable. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It is the public universities who have to, structure their systems right. The government needs to grant autonomy to these universities so they can run properly like a university should. I recently saw how much universities in the UK generate in terms of IGR, and it is staggering. It's billions of pounds. Nothing stops our universities from running like that. But with the current structure, I doubt that can happen. So I believe you talked about the ministers, federal government approving billions for 3 ministries. I think the administration of the current administration, they just woke up after the elections, and currently they are beginning to do things that we expected of them earlier on in the administration. So I think they should just allow the incoming administration do what they have to do rather than dictate what they should be doing, which I think that's the current situation.
But it's just 2 weeks to the handover dates to a new administration. Won't this affect, transition, new personnel taking over at the different ministries?
Of course, yeah, it will. And I think it is wrong for the outgoing administration to dictate the pace at which the incoming administration would operate. I hope we would not be encouraging waste when the new administration comes in and decides to jettison all of this. It would, further, make us poorer and, ruin our commonwealth, as it were.
Well, one of the issues you've raised seems to be pointing at a probe of this government by the next one. Don't answer that question. Dr. Abimbola Oyarino, researcher, Institute of African and Diaspora Studies at the University of Lagos. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.